I'm going to try typing something in the chat again. Oh my God, what is going on? I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Oh. Okay. um I can't. Okay. Is this, maybe I'm looking at the wrong chat. I think maybe I'm looking at the wrong chat. Okay. Nicole, are you here? Somebody mentioned something about sending up the bat signal. is that is that from tonight? Oh my gosh. Why do I not understand how this works? Oh, this is so frustrating. Hey, okay, this is tonight. No, it's not. Maybe it is. Okay, it is tonight. Okay, this chat is from right now, from like tonight. Okay, so Nicole says, "This is my first live chat. Hi, Dana." Okay, yes, thank you. Oh my God, thank you. Yes, the bat signal is tonight. Okay, good. Good. Because, see, I'm not crazy. Wednesday, tonight. Okay, now. Awesome. Okay. And by thumbs down, I mean now, not boo, boo. Okay. Because the other chat that I'm looking at, I don't even know. Like, what is this screen then that YouTube has up? It's a chat with me chatting, but nobody else is responding. This freaking chaos. Technology and I have a like tense relationship. So you guys should just know that. It's how my life goes. It's awful. So okay, it is working now. I'm glad it's working now. It was definitely not working before. So let me scroll up and see what I've missed because I've been asking people to say something for like a way long time now. And they were probably thinking that there's something really wrong with me. Okay, Cam says, restart the session, Dana. Well, Cam. Brian says, breathe, Dana. I know. Um, yeah, this is my third live stream. I am still getting it all figured out, to obviously, right? So bear with me. Okay, so we have first question. And the first question is, you work with your narcissist. He triangulates you at work. You must stay professional. Any advice? That is really tough. Is he a coworker or is he a boss or what's the dynamic? And I guess kind of while, thanks, while you're typing out the rest of your answer, Melanie, I really advise people, if you're working with a person who, okay, coworker, who has it out for you and they are like hell bent on making gossiping and causing rumors and making your life a living hell. My 2 cents, and I know it's not fair, and I know it's not, I get it, I know it's inconvenient, but yes, I would leave the job. I would leave the job because boundaries don't work with these kinds of people. They tend to be really charming, they tend to be very convincing, and life is just really, really too short to deal with nonsense or to be miserable. So, if it's at all possible, I would advise looking for another job, because it's every day is going to be a battle. Every time you see this person, it's going to be incredibly stressful. Um, I know it's not, I know it's not fair. I know it's not ideal. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, draw the boundary and go to human resources and do all this. And you can try doing all that. Yes, me myself is saying, yes, leave the job. She just walked out of a job because of that. Yeah, yeah. You know what? And I will say too, life is really funny sometimes how these things work. You can have, if you're finding yourself like just continually swimming upstream, like just in all of that resistance, and you've got this really difficult person in your life, and sometimes, and I know this sounds hippie woo woo, but like sometimes it's just life trying to tell you like you're on the wrong track, and like trying to tell you that there's other things out there for you, and it's just getting you out of that situation. um yeah. She says, I can't, I really can't, but I hear you no matter what. I would start brainstorming ways that you potentially could. I'm not sure what you do for a living, but maybe this is something that maybe you could do freelance work. Maybe you could go into business for yourself. Maybe you could get some sort of job that go back to school. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you could go, but I would definitely keep the possibility of leaving as an option, because just looking at your picture, you look young, and it's this is not something that you want to tolerate for decades on end. So, okay, hello. It's hard when you've got somebody that's bullying you, whether it's at school or um, at work or in whatever capacity in your life. It really, really is difficult to kind of not let that weigh you down and to move forward. Okay, so this new person says, I feel like you believe in the power of the universe and thank you for your channel. I for sure do believe in the power of universe or God or kind of whatever name that you want to call that energy out there. Um, it's I was just talking to a friend of mine today about kind of about this same thing, how when we're encountering all of this resistance in our life and you're feeling like, you're swimming upstream, and this is, you're not feeling energized by what you're doing, and you're trying to make this bad situation work. And if you can figure out a way to just kind of follow your joy, follow what makes you happy. And it's really funny how when you start doing what you love, that oftentimes it's like all of these invisible helping hands kind of come out of nowhere and guide you along. And I get how hippie woo woo that sounds, but there's a lot of truth to it. And it's just, I mean, I speak from experience with this whole channel and with my website. I had known for years and years that this is what I really wanted to do with my life. And I kept talking myself out of it, like, well, but, how can you be an advocate and how can you do all this? And because when I was working at a domestic violence shelter, I mean, I did not get paid enough, and I've got student loans, and I loved my job, but I couldn't make ends meet working there. And it's so funny how just getting in that flow and being able to do this, and it's just picked up steam, and there's just The response has been absolutely overwhelming. And so just wanted to share that with you. So let's see. Interesting. Okay. I found that the root chakra and throat helps to get over kind of cluster B, narcissist, bipolar disorder relationships. What do you think? I am not that well versed at all on chakras and chakra energy. I think it's fascinating. I like the concept behind it, but I definitely do not know enough to even have a decent conversation about it. I would be curious to know why you think that, and why you found that the root and throat chakras potentially help these types of relationships. Okay, great question. Okay, Goddess Love asks, how do you know the difference between an emotionally unavailable guy and a narcissist? They both start out with love bombing, but once you're hooked, they pull away and the abuse begins, taking advantage of you. Well, I would say, well, okay, so narcissists tend to be, they're incredibly selfish, incredibly entitled. They tend to have a lack of empathy, a lack of remorse, just kind of, real grandiose type behavior. But at the end of the day, toxic behavior is toxic behavior is toxic behavior. And it doesn't really matter if they're just emotionally unavailable or if they are a narcissist or kind of what have you. If this person isn't right for you, then that's all that matters, right? So I would encourage you to focus on how you feel when you're with somebody. And so if you're with an emotionally unavailable guy, that right there, that's enough reason to not be in a relationship with somebody, because you can't be in a relationship with somebody who's emotionally unavailable, right? So to kind of pay attention to how you're feeling around somebody, and to spend time with people that where you feel nourished and you feel loved and you're having this good relationship, and it's this kind of equal dynamic where it's a good give and take and you're feeling emotionally fulfilled and you're able to give emotional availability to them, and they're feeling good when they're around you. So there's that give and take there. um Yeah. Okay, so back to the chakra question. The root grounds you, makes you feel like you belong, and the throat chakra allows you to express how you feel. I think that is really interesting and it makes total sense. We will have to continue the whole chakra conversation more in depth, and I will have to read up about it. I'm planning on doing live streams every Wednesday at this time, so 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So going to make a note to myself to research more about chakras, so we can either talk about it here or we can talk about it on the Facebook group, or maybe I'll do a blog post about it. But interesting. And so I'm just curious, with the whole chakra thing, did you find that you did any like chakra balancing that helped with it? Or how did you kind of tune in the the chakras to help you with that? Oh wow, you're from London. That's so cool. Chakra, throat, and root. Well, fantastic big love from me from Michigan. So thank you for that. Okay, yes, Goddess mentions this is so true. I just don't think I've ever been in a healthy relationship. I either attract narcissists and or emotionally unavailable people. Maybe I have to work on myself first to be able to attract healthy people. Hands down, work on yourself first. And, it's the whole kind of like water seeks its own level. And so the healthier you are, the healthier other people you're going to attract, and more importantly that you're going to be attracted to, because we all attract the wide range of people. I mean, I joke about this in some of my videos, like, I attract the whole range from like hobos to CEOs. And it's not so much about who you're attracting, it's who you're keeping in your life and who you are attracted to. And so to ask yourself kind of what is the appeal for this. And so there was a video that I did a while back, and I'll just talk about it briefly here, but my whole take on it is that if you're finding yourself getting caught up with the love bombing, which a lot of us do, it tends to be because it feels so good. And it's when you're with a narcissist or a sociopath, they lay on that love bombing so thick. And so it's not normal, right? It's not normal. People don't come on that fast, that strong. And now, granted, a lot of like more of like the codependent type people can also come on that fast and that strong. But it's because it's this intense need to want to bond to somebody else. And I personally think it's because we're really starved out for affection or attention or love or importance. And so that's just what I found in my own life is I was really drawn to narcissists and sociopaths because right away they were giving me all of this attention. They were making me feel so loved and so important. And if we're already feeling really vulnerable in that area, if that's already kind of what I call like an empty bucket, if we already are running low in that area, it's just sort of like a starving person. We just pounce on that and we just eat it up. And then next thing we know, we're not thinking clearly, right? Because the whole cognitive dissonance thing kicks in. But we get drunk on these emotions because it feels so good to, in our mind, we convince ourselves, oh, this person must be for real. And we know that this is not a good idea, right? It's not a good idea to be moving at this like whirlwind pace, but it feels so intense and it feels so good. And if we've been so starved out for so long, then it's hard to let go of that. And so then you see a lot of people that have a hard time breaking away from these people. And so, my guess is too, with all of us, with manipulative people and with codependent people, it's kind of how we do something is how we do everything. And so I know for me, it was a big eye opener when I realized, oh, wow, okay, no, it's not just that I've dated a few people that are narcissists and sociopaths. I've had a lot of friends that were kind of in that whole cluster B as well. And it was the same reason. The friendships would come on fast and furious and, just the super intensity where within a week we're best friends and we're spending all this time together. And then next thing I know, they're really controlling and they're really difficult and I'm walking on eggshells and all of that. So I'd be curious to kind of know your experience and for you to reflect on that and to ask yourself, do you have a pattern of having a lot of these one-sided friendships and relationships in your life? Because odds are you probably do as well. And the solution to that is going to be, if it's because you've got this empty bucket where you're starved out, where you're for affection or attention or feeling important to somebody else, you need to learn to fill your own empty bucket. And so it's sort of like the same thing, right? With going grocery shopping on an empty stomach. Like you don't want to do that because you're going to make really, really terrible decisions. It's the same thing with, if you're starved out in that area emotionally and then trying to date or make friends with people, you're going to kind of jump on the first person that comes along that shows you attention. And it's not a good way to do it. It's why I always recommend the website, and I'm not affiliated with them, although I probably should be because I always recommend them. But, the website meetup.com. I mean, this is a really great way. My empty bucket is now a barrel, she says. Meetup.com is a really great way to fill your own empty bucket. You can go out there, you can meet new people, you can do new things. And the more you're giving yourself that nourishment of, friends and relationships and doing things, and you're building this life that you love. And that's really the key to all of this. The more that you're kind of, this is going to sound, kind of hippie woo woo too, but the more you mate with your own soul, then the better soulmate you can actually become with somebody else. because that's where we're going wrong with all of this. I really feel it's sort of like we're looking outside of ourselves for happiness, for love, for affection, for attention. We need to really turn it all inward. Okay. Let's see. Self-compassion is so important. Yes, Brian, I agree completely. I think one of the questions I asked last last time was the question of, how to continually ask yourself, how can I value myself today? And you can replace the word value with compassion or with love or whatever. And for me, I think the word love is so emotionally charged, and people it's lost a lot of meaning, and people it don't get that. Oftentimes I didn't. But if you're asking yourself, okay, how can I treat myself with value today? You get a different answer. And so then that's a kind of a good way to that. You can go about filling that empty bucket of just thinking, how can you be good to yourself every single day? Okay, so let's see what else we have for questions. Yes, that is exactly okay. Goddess says, yes, that is exactly true. I have had friendships like that, and I've always ended up disappointed with lovers and friends. I just realized that I have separation anxiety and probably a love addict because these things are a reoccurring theme. Yes, yes, they are. And here's kind of the added irony to it. Okay, so a lot of people, when I talk to them about the importance of, having healthy, high standards and high expectations for what you have in your life, a lot of people, and I thought this way too for a long time, it was the idea of, well, but nobody's perfect, right? Or, I don't want to set my standards too high because then I won't have anybody in my life. But the irony is, if you don't set them high enough, that's when you really don't have anybody in your life, because you're tolerating a lot. You're basically settling for crumbs, right? You're letting in all of the wrong people that are giving you that instant gratification of feeling good, and of you know it's that whirlwind friendship, that whirlwind romance. And the way to break it is, it's like going to the grocery store on an empty stomach, right? The way to fix that is you need to eat ahead, eat before you go, right? So going to making sure that you're spending time, that you're nourishing yourself with love and friendship before you're starved out. So, you know, meetup.com is a great way to do it. I always recommend to people, seriously, and this is going to sound nuts, but join like 20 different groups on Meetup. You don't have to go to all of them. You don't even have to go to any of them. Join a bunch. And it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, these groups are open to the general public, so some people, it's the general public, so some people are going to be totally your kind of people, and some people like not at all. And so just to stay open, have no expectations, have a great time. And you're some of the people that I really enjoy the most, some of my closest friends right now, I've met through meetup.com. And I it's a great website. So yes, Goddess, there's totally hope for change. A lot of us, it's like when we know better, we do better. Like with anything in life, right? But a lot of it's just the knowing better. So for so long we don't realize how we keep getting caught up with these people. We wonder, like, why are they so attracted to us? Maybe we're just somehow damaged goods. Maybe our childhood was just so traumatic that we are just incapable of having a healthy relationship with anybody. Like we just don't see where we're going wrong. But really, I think it really boils down to that, those empty buckets. And if you look in my videos, there's a playlist that I have called something like how to avoid dating or befriending another narcissist. That very first video in there is on empty buckets, and that is what I would highly recommend. I think the first 3 videos in that playlist I would recommend that you watch, because it's a great one. Okay, so I've blathered on for long enough. Let me go catch up on some questions here. Okay, channel asks, okay, I haven't spoken to him too much in about a year. And now, after having a new child who's 1 now, and my child is 4, he's now begging to be my friend. Okay, so what you're really talking about, most likely, is a term called hoovering. And hoovering is a term that's named after the Hoover vacuum. It's a technique. It's a technique that's done by many manipulative people, and it's where they will come back into somebody's life out of the clear blue. Sometimes it'll be a month later, sometimes it'll be a year, sometimes it'll even be decades later. And a hoovering attempt often starts off very innocent, so it'll be kind of, and then they'll act like nothing happened. like like they did nothing wrong, that you guys are just kind of friends that lost touch, is how they act. And so it's, they'll send a text message or a phone call, or they'll chat you up on Facebook, and it's something like that. Hey, how you doing? And the victim often feels awkward or uncomfortable to not respond, because their communication is so innocent seeming. And then the victim thinks, well, maybe I'm overreacting. Like, I just need to be nice, be civil. But the reality is, when they when a manipulative person reopens communication, or is trying to reopen communication with somebody, it's their way of kind of like knocking on the door to see if you're still home. And if you answer the door, they know that they can then kick it open and have whatever kind of relationship they want to have with you again. So, okay, so yes. Do they hoover even after 6 months? They will hoover a person even after 60 years. I'm not even kidding you. They will just, they circle around, and it's like whenever they are needing some sort of self-esteem boost, or they're needing something, that's when they surface. So, yep, after 4 years. Yep, yeah. I mean, it literally can be after, I'm not even joking when I say after 60. I think I mentioned this before in another video. My mom was engaged to a guy when she was, I don't know, in her early 20s. And he was a narcissist, and she had moved across the country for him, and the whole nine. And he had told her, after she'd sent out wedding invitations and everything, that he was planning on he was just going to do whatever he wanted to do, that he was going to sleep around, and that she just needed to be okay with it. Well, she broke up with him, hadn't talked to him, and they had other issues in their relationship. He chatted her up on Facebook, and it's been almost, well, it's been probably 50 years. 50 years later, he chatted her up like nothing had happened, and they hadn't talked in like 50 years. So, you always have to have your emotional guard up around these people, because you just never know when they're going to circle around. Yeah, Nicole says my mom was dating a narcissist when I was a teenager too. Yeah, a lot of it, this dynamic, this whole kind of like giver taker dynamic, which is really kind of what we're talking about, is it's a pattern, right? And it's a pattern that is, in our families. We probably have had family, relatives, or even parents that have had this dynamic. That's probably, in large part, I think, where a lot of us kind of get this from. It's kind of what is normal. It's sort of like children of alcoholics tend to marry alcoholics. Children that grow up in a home with domestic violence tend to marry, or recreate that same kind of dynamic. So it's just sort of like what's familiar to us. And with a lot of these dynamics, emotional intelligence, this stuff isn't taught in school. And I say this all the time, and it really irks me, because it really should be. Let's see. Majid says, "Wow, I've heard through Spartan life that once you're fully over it and recovered, that they somehow feel it and the hoovering starts." What's I think a lot of people would agree with this. It's not even that you're fully over it. It's like they just seem to know all the time, right? Like if you're thinking about them, even like if you're not over them, like even if you're just thinking about them, or whatever, they tend to surface, and it's uncanny. It's I don't know. It is weird. I will say that. I've had the same thing too, where it's like, you're not even really comfortable saying their name out loud. You're not, I dated a total nut job when I was in high school, who I'd say definitely is hands down a sociopath. And I didn't like to, I still don't say his name out loud. I mean, this guy was absolutely nuts. And it was just by the grace of God that I didn't get even more tangled up with him. But yeah, it was the same. Like I just felt like, how does he know where I am? How does he know? I mean, I had an unlisted phone number for a long time. I had, this was before cell phones. This was really before the internet. So that kind of tells you how old I am. But it was very, very, very unsettling. So yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that, and it really freaks them out. Let's see, have I ever experienced a smear campaign? Not to my face. I did with Steve, but I heard about it through the second relationship. And I've had, like I said, I've really had like a handful of relationships with these kinds of people, but the two main relationships I talk about are Jack and Steve. And Steve, after that breakup, it turned out, he was telling me that he was getting a divorce and that this was all done. I had seen papers. He moved with me cross country. I mean, I had no reason to doubt him. Yes, he had told his wife, was trying to get back together. Well, he actually did. He upped and left me, went back to her. Who the hell knows really why? I think there was probably a handful of reasons for it. But yeah, he was telling her that I had threw myself at him. All kinds of stuff, all kinds of crazy, terrible, terrible, hateful, ridiculous things I wouldn't even, I just was shocked to find out about. This is kind of personal, but I guess my whole channel is kind of personal, but during our relationship, I had gotten pregnant, and I'd miscarried. And when after he'd left, he was texting me and was telling me, feeding this whole fantasy of, I miss you, I love you, home is wherever you are. I've made a mistake coming back to the state that he went back to, and I want to be with you, and I want to start a family with you. And he was sending me pictures of him and his son, and baby names that we had talked about. I mean, he was really, and the whole time he was living with his wife. He was actually trying to get his wife to adopt a child, her granddaughter is what it was. It just I mean, crazy stuff. So here he is telling me all about this life, this whole future faking, this life that he wants to have with me. He's doing the exact same thing to his wife. Thankfully, his wife and I got to talking, and sharing text messages and everything. And I mean, like, when you see the smear campaign and you realize, wow, this person truly does not care at all. Like, they're willing to, he was telling her that he didn't even think that that it was his baby with me, and just all kinds of things. I mean, if a person can say that about their own child, then there's no conscience there. There's no remorse. There's no empathy. There's no nothing. It's gross. Yeah, he's a total pig. Hey, Adrian made it. Welcome. I want you to feel very special because I changed the time for you. So, and here's how old I am, okay? It is 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and I want you to know that this is normally my yoga pants and YouTube time, where I lounge around and watch a bunch of totally unrelated garbage on YouTube. This is my like trash TV time, I guess you could say. Okay, Ellen asks, is it normal to still feel so pissed even 6 months afterwards? Yeah. Sometimes I feel that the only way to get over this would be if you drove off a bridge. Oh, honey, I totally get you. I totally, totally understand. Yes, the rage, I think if you didn't feel this way, I would be worried about you, because it's one thing to go through like a bad breakup, right? But to be so incredibly like screwed over by another person, it's, you know, brings out rage in us. And especially if you're going through that smear campaign where they're making you out to be the bad guy and all of this, and you know, it's like there's so much emotional trauma that a person goes through, that you know, there just gets to be this point where it's, yeah, it's hard to not want to hurt them or to wish them that they would die. I mean, I think that that's really normal. So, okay, there's been a lot of questions tonight about working with narcissists. So, okay, it's been a year now since I've talked to him in person. I work with him, so I can't get over him. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier tonight. My whole 2 cents on this is life is too short to be around toxic people. I know that it's inconvenient to quit a job. I get it. I know that it isn't fair and that it's, you know, nobody likes to go job hunting, but I would strongly encourage you to start looking for another job, because it's hard to heal. It's hard for a wound to heal when you keep touching it, right? And that's what it is if you're working with a person that's causing you all of this emotional trauma. I think you will. And the thing is, too, when you're around this person every day, when you're used to this emotional trauma every single day of seeing somebody that you absolutely dread every single day, what that does to your body, like the stress on your body, you probably don't even realize it because it's become like this new normal for you. But after you leave that job, you're going to just feel 100 pounds lighter. It's just this huge weight's been lifted, and you're going to think to yourself, oh my God, I cannot believe I felt this bad for that long. So I would just, by any means necessary, try to find a different job, even if it means you're waiting tables, even if it means, even if, like, just get out of there. Your sanity and your health is not worth it. Thank you. It feels good to have somebody finally get you. You are so very welcome. And yeah, I know the feeling. I felt really nuts after I went through everything. So it's my pleasure to be able to do this. And I think it's so awesome that you guys are all connecting and supporting each other too. So cool. Sanctified asks, I see all these comments. I didn't know that this was real. I thought I was alone. Yeah, we all do. And that's kind of the added kind of victim. I think there's several different stages of victimization, right? So like we have what we went through, which we were victimized that way. And then we're often kind of re-victimized unintentionally by a lot of kind of well-intentioned but misinformed people, which oftentimes are friends, our family, even therapists, who don't understand what we went through. Because it's one thing to kind of learn about this or to read about it, and it's another thing to actually live it. And so people, unless you've lived it, it's hard to even fully understand it. But then there's the third part of, so no, yes, sanctified, you're not crazy, okay? The third part of like the victimization is within ourselves. And so then it's that whole questioning, am I the problem? What's wrong with me? I must be paranoid. I must have issues. I can't believe it. Why do I feel like this? You might even be using terminology to describe what you're going through as like, it feels like I have PTSD, right? It feels like I'm having these night terrors. I can't sleep, I can't eat, or I'm eating too much, or I can't sleep, or I'm sleeping too much. Like, you're not functioning. And to everybody else, it's sort of like, well, what's wrong? Like, you just went through a bad breakup, right? Get over it. But to yourself, you're like, I'm trying to get over it. I can't. I have so much anger. I can't even see straight. And it scares me because I'm a pretty calm person for the most part. I mean, I don't have a temper really. I mean, it takes a lot to bring that out in me. And I was so angry after everything that happened, especially with Jack. I felt like I could barely function. I don't think I've ever been that angry for that long. Actually, for sure for that long, but I don't think I've ever been that angry in my whole entire life. And I didn't even know what to do with that. I couldn't sleep. I was having night terrors. I was having tremendous amounts of anxiety. I was doubting. I became paranoid. I didn't know. I felt like I couldn't trust people, not just new people. I couldn't trust even friends or family. I felt nuts. I really felt nuts. I wanted to stay inside my house. I was waking up kind of throughout the night. I was having just like the worst night terrors. I would wake up either screaming or crying. The dreams were just really vivid. And sometimes it wasn't so much that the dreams themselves were like vivid imagery. It was like vivid emotionally. I would wake up with just this intense feeling of sadness or love, or it was just all very, very, very emotional, and it was awful. So you're not alone in that. And it does pass. It does take time. I think I read somewhere once on average it takes between, like 18 months or so for a lot of that to go away. Let's see. Dana, my therapist is funny. Is funny enough. Me and my cluster B ex couple therapist and told me she has borderline personality disorder. He says it's out of her hands. What do you think? Do borderline personality people lie, or do they really love? Yeah, I think borderline personality people do love. And there is treatment for borderline. There's a therapy called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. It's basically kind of mindfulness. It helps them to get more in touch with their emotions. And I've seen tremendous results with people like that. So, yeah, it's not so much the question, I guess, if they can love. It's because there's different degrees of personality disorders, right? Which is unfortunately because it's not like measured that way. And I actually had a conversation about a year ago or so with a guy who has been on one of the teams that was working on the DSM and trying to recategorize personality disorders in different ways. And he had recommended that there should be a scale, like a severity scale, which I agree completely. But so a person can have a personality disorder, but they can also have like different, like, different degrees of severity of that personality disorder. At the end of the day, the question isn't so much whether or not a borderline person can love. It's, you know kind of what do you want in your life, and you know just kind of think about kind of where, it's really a hard path to go down if you fall in love with the person that's got some major stuff wrong with them, even though it might be fixable, right? It's like falling in love with an alcoholic or falling in love with somebody that's got some major stuff to iron out in their personality. That's a hard road to go down. I highly, highly suggest to date a person for who they are today and not who you hope they can be in the future. And can you have a deeply, emotional, committed, sincere, open, and honest relationship with that person today? And if the answer is no, then you need to go do some work on you. They need to go do some work on them. That's my 2 cents. Um, yes. So, okay, Ellen says, my therapist told me that all of my issues were my fault because of my codependent nature. That is, oh boy, that is such a huge, huge topic. Huge. I don't even know how to begin to discuss that. So, there's like kind of two main different theories on abuse, right? So there's theory number one, which is that it's all of the abusive person's problem, right? That the victim is a victim, 100% a victim, that they had the abusive person is solely responsible for their behavior. Then kind of the other philosophy on abuse is, especially when it comes to adults, the theory that adults can't be victims, especially if they're in a relationship. And so that that there is this huge part or component where the victim does have responsibility. It's really, really tough in these kinds of situations because personally, I don't think that all victims of highly manipulative people are codependent. But here's the thing. So like the word codependent, there's a lot of different definitions of that word. There's no, it's not in the, I don't believe it's in the DSM. And it's vague. And so it depends. It depends on the definition that your therapist was using. I think people can be so manipulated by another person that it kind of almost like mimics codependent type behavior. But again, it depends on like kind of what are we talking about as far as the definition of codependency. So let me just give you an example. So from my experience, I was making myself nuts. I was trying to figure out what on earth was I not seeing with Jack and Steve, right? They came across, I mean, hell, I was working at a domestic violence shelter when I was dating Jack. I taught classes on how to avoid abusive people. This is what I did for a living, day in, day out. I've dealt with hundreds at the time, hundreds of different women, different situations, different abusive men. You would really think that if anybody would have known better, it would have been me. And so I was really caught off guard when I found myself at the tail end of this relationship. Here was this guy who was Prince Charming. At the very end of it, it turned out I really think he was trying to poison me. I think that he just thought I had all this money and that's why he was with me. So I was shocked when everything kind of came down like that. And I didn't feel like I was codependent at all. I mean, there was no back and forth with me and him. There was no obvious like devalue stage done to my face. He was absolutely Prince Charming until I found out about the double life. Pretty much the same thing with Steve, except I don't think Steve was trying to kill me. I think Steve just was, very impulsive, and it just fed his ego. I don't even know. I don't even know really like what was going through his mind, because he just uprooted his whole life. And there was no thought to anything that he was doing. I don't think, because there wasn't, I don't feel like I had poor boundaries. It was sort of like once I found out that there was this double life, then I like upped and left and was like, oh, hell no, we're not doing this. Like, I'm not going to stick around for this. But at the same time, so I made myself nuts for a long time trying to figure out what am I missing? Because this can't be coincidence. I mean, this is two major relationships within like a 5-year span of time. What the conclusion that I came to, and I think this is where a lot of people get tripped up, and this is why I think a lot of people don't think that they're necessarily codependent, is I came to the realization that there's really 3 different types of people out in the world. You have toxic people, okay? You have normal people, and this is where I was getting tripped up, is for a long time I thought there was just 2 types of people, like normal and toxic. But that is not the case. There's normal, there's toxic, but then there's healthy. And that was the piece I was really missing. And so the red flags that I was glossing over, they were red flags that a lot of like other quote unquote normal people would gloss over. The difference is healthy people would not have glossed over those red flags. They would have slowed things down, and they would have taken a step back, and they would have gotten out of harm's way. That's the difference. So are you codependent? Possibly. I think it depends on how you define codependency. Regardless, at the end of the day, it does not, this is not your fault. This is so not your fault. Normal, decent people do not see these people coming. This stuff is not taught. It's not common knowledge, right? And so we all have this idea of what an abusive person looks like. And here's kind of the added layer of this, right? So there's this idea that abusive people are kind of like the movie Sleeping with the Enemy, right? Are you familiar with that movie? And how he looks like a bad guy, right? He never smiles. He looks like a big, bad, mean dude. But And then kind of movies also tell us that if a guy or a girl is really charming and really charismatic and friendly and likable, and they go to church and they volunteer and they do all these things, that's what a good person looks like. And so it can be really confusing, especially if you find yourself with more of that charming person, to think, well, wait a minute, this is a good person. And so a lot of victims stay tangled up in this because this person seems like on the surface a really great person. They don't match this idea in their head of what a bad person or what bad behavior looks like. And so it takes a long time for them to kind of sort out, is this a good person with like bouts of bad behavior, or is this a bad person that can pretend to be good? And it takes time. And then also, you've got a lot of friends and family, especially if the person is really charming and charismatic. Again, for my example, Steve, everybody loved him. He was, I mean, incredibly charismatic. And I even had my mom, who's got great boundaries and who's really down to earth, and was even saying like, well, maybe he's really sorry, maybe you can give him another chance. And I was like, no, you're absolutely nuts. Like, he's a liar. I'm done. Like, I could never, ever trust him. There's no way I'm going back to that. But so you've got outside influences that are often pushing victims to stay in these dynamics because they don't understand it. Even a lot of well-intentioned therapists or pastors often push people into these relationships because they think, because they get manipulated, right? Because this person's so charming, and again, it doesn't match this idea in their mind of what an abusive person looks like. So there's so many different elements at play. Okay, let's see some other questions here. Let me scroll up and see. Okay, so KSZ says, I can't get him out of my mind. This is what drives me crazy. It's been 6 months and I still think of him every single day. Well, you're not alone in that. A lot of people kind of get stuck in that, like, just obsessive stage where they're checking social media, where they're checking dating sites. They just become obsessive about their former partner. They want to know what this person's up to and have they moved on. And even if the person has moved on, it's still just, they have a hard time letting go of that. And yeah, I would agree. I feel like that's still, I guess it's a stage. I would agree. I think that is kind of a stage for a lot of people. And really, my take on it is, I think the solution is to really take all of that energy and to redirect it back into yourself. Something that I kept telling myself over and over and over and over again was, the best revenge is a good life. The best revenge is a good life. The best revenge is a good life. And so when I found myself getting really angry, when I found myself fixating on them, or just even feeling sad or whatever, I would force myself to get up and go do something, to just redirect that energy. And I think a lot of it starts with just making the declaration to yourself that you are not going to allow this person to destroy your life, A, and then B, that you're not going to allow them to steal any more of your joy or happiness. And then get busy on doing things that you love, because and especially like meeting new people and doing new things. If you aren't spending time with friends, if you've really isolated, you're going to be really starved out in that area for like affection and attention and all of this. And so you're going to feel that void that they've left in your life. And so if you're walking around with like this kind of big black hole inside of you, that's really hard to move on. It's sort of like the saying, and I'm not recommending anybody does this because I'm not recommending this at all, but it's the whole saying, what's the fastest way to get over somebody? The answer is to find somebody new. There's a lot of truth to that. And I'm not, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying go out and date because you don't want to. Not when you're vulnerable. But the reason that works so well, kind of the quickest way, again, like the quickest way to heal, to get over somebody is to find somebody new, is because it fills that void. And especially if that void is you're feeling lonely, you're feeling like you need attention or affection, to go out and find more attention and affection. Again, not saying that I want you to go out and date. I think that's a terrible idea right now. But to go find attention and affection out there. And so you can get that by volunteering at an animal shelter. Okay. You can get that in a lot of different ways. Dogs, pets are great for kind of filling that void, spending time, meeting new people, spending time with friends, spending time with new friends. Again, this is why I really love meetup.com, because it's not, I think to the benefit of meetup.com is you're meeting new people. And so you're meeting, if if you're meeting different men, you're meeting different women, it's sort of like you realize that there's kind of more fish in the sea. And you just kind of realize that there's lots of other people out there. There's lots of other like-minded people out there, which is what's so great with meetup.com. Join 20 different groups or so, and then go to the different events that you enjoy. I think you will find the more you can force yourself to get out and interact with other people, the quicker that you will actually start to heal. There's still kind of work that you need to do on you after this, but that part of that craving them, filling that void really does help with that. Let's see. How do you differentiate between being a victim of a narcissist slash being raised by one, and in turn picked up their traits and being a covert narcissist? I'm not sure if I understand the question. Are you asking, how can you tell if you have some narcissistic traits or if you are a narcissist? If that's what you're asking, if you're asking, if you were raised by a narcissistic parent and then you have some kind of narcissistic qualities versus you are a narcissist, I honestly, it's not so much. Here's the thing with anything in life, right? It's not so much the label that you associate with it, especially when we're talking about personality disorders, because there's so much with personality that this is like a soft science. I mean, this is not like this is how this is. It's totally flexible. Every person's totally different. Anybody that says this is exactly how this is for a personality disorder, that's not correct, because this information is continually being changed and updated. So it's not, I would encourage you to not focus so much on the definitions or sorting out things like that. If you have a sincere desire to change, if you're seeing kind of problematic behavior within yourself, and if you feel like you have a desire to actually work on that and make it better, then by all means do that. Don't let me or anybody else define who you are and what you're capable of. Because again, especially with personality disorders, this is not a hard science. So you can ask 10 different mental health experts on personality disorders, and you can probably get at least 10 different answers. So it's personality disorders, especially, that's more kind of like clinical terms that people use in more of the mental health profession. It's just kind of a quick way for us to have an idea, to look at different patients and be like, okay, this is what this person's antisocial. You kind of know at a quick glance what you're going to be dealing with. Or this person is, obsessive compulsive, or this person is, mental illness. We're talking, schizoaffective or bipolar. You have an idea of what kind of behaviors to screen for. But, there's lots of other factors at play when you're talking about kind of behavior and what's going on. I mean, some of it can be situational. A person can be, maybe they underwent some sort of major trauma in their life, and they're having a nervous breakdown. They might be diagnosed with something at that time, but then situationally, as it resolves, then that diagnosis is now changed. So I guess that's kind of a long, a long-winded answer there, but In short, none of us are perfect. We all have things within our personality that we want or need to work on. And it's one of those things like once we know better, then we can do better. But if there's things about you that you don't like, and there's things about me that I don't like that could definitely be considered, kind of more narcissistic. Like I am a terrible gift giver. Terrible. Terrible. It's awful and it's embarrassing and I hate it. And every freaking birthday and Christmas and whatever, I promise myself that I'm going to try to work harder at it and be better at it. And sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. And it's so do you see what I'm saying? Like we all have stuff that it's I don't know. So do what you can and just keep working towards becoming the best version of you possible. Okay, so here's another question. Is it normal that I want him to hoover me just so I can ignore him so he suffers a narcissistic injury? I am not a vindictive person, but I know it would make me feel better. Is it normal? Yeah, probably. I can see your logic behind that. I think the word suffer sums it up perfectly. I think every single victim out there wants this narcissistic person to suffer. It's this whole kind of eye for an eye thing, right? Like they put us through so much pain that we want them to even hopefully come close to feeling the same amount of pain that we feel. And it's hard. It's hard to move past that. But again, I would encourage you to keep telling yourself like the best revenge is a good life. And because any energy that you're spending on them is energy that you're not spending on yourself. Okay, let's see. There's somebody here. I'm not sure if you are a troll or not, but a question. I'm a narcissist and I need help. Is it wrong that I think I own the world and think I let you guys just hang out here? Is it wrong that you think that? I don't know if wrong is the word. Delusional? Maybe would be the word I would use with that. If you're a narcissist, here's the thing. This is kind of what I was talking about before. If you're a narcissist and you have a sincere desire for help, if you're realizing that something is not right, then by all means go get help. The only reason narcissists don't change is because they don't want to. And so if a narcissist like sees that they have a problem and they want to change, they can change. Like change the you know, it's the first step to change is awareness, right? And once a person truly realizes they have a problem, then that's the first step. But they have to actually want to change. And again, lots of narcissists don't. Ellen asks, will you be doing any video segments on bucket filling advice? That's a great question. Bucket filling advice. I'm going to be doing a whole series on kind of like codependency and boundaries that was supposed to start at the beginning of this month. And then all hell broke loose when I downloaded Windows 10 onto my computer and I lost a bunch of work. And yeah, it was kind of a hot mess. So yes, I do plan on doing that. Let's see. Narcissists never want help. Well, yeah, they never want help because they don't care. Like if they, some of them might. This goes back to like if they have a sincere desire to change, then they can change. I fully believe in like the capacity for people for change, for personal growth. It's a lot of, I mean, the thing with narcissists and sociopaths is because they very rare, everything works out, right? Like they're always getting their way. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they manipulate, they can talk their way out of everything. They don't ever really hit emotional rock bottom because they don't attach. Like they don't attach to people. And they don't really care. And so that's what's problematic in part two with that is so that they never really hit that emotional rock bottom. But again, we're talking like degrees of severity. And so personality disorders are not, there is no degrees of severity. So is it possible that a person can be like mildly narcissistic and still have the capacity to change? Absolutely. I fully believe that. Like, I think people, you know yourself the best. And this is why I'm not a huge fan of labels, because, who is anybody else to say what a person is capable of? Like, only you know what you're capable of. So, is it true that some borderline personality people don't know they have borderline personality? Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's not, again, like this stuff isn't like openly discussed, right? So a borderline personality person might, there's certain like kind of telltale signs that they might think, wow, my life is always really hard, because they tend to always be in a state of kind of drama and chaos. Everything, it's got to be exhausting to be borderline personality, because everything is a struggle. Their whole life is like them swimming upstream, right? And they tend to experience really extreme emotions, and they tend to jump very quickly to suicide or suicide attempts to being an option on how to handle stress and chaos. And they feel very intensely about everything, and it's hard for them to hold jobs and to have friends and to have relationships. And it's very a very turbulent life for a lot of borderline people. I don't think that they most probably are not familiar with the term borderline, but I'm sure that they think my life really, really is hard. My life really, really sucks. It feels like I'm continually swimming upstream. And why does all of this happen to me? So, if you, but again, with borderline stuff, if they can get in with a good therapist who's familiar with DBT and can get into like a really great DBT program, oftentimes they can have really awesome results. I mean, I've seen tons of patients that are borderline that are like night and day different after going through DBT and doing a lot of work. So I think a lot of them, but again, this is like the whole, you know, um, degrees of severity. Like, if they're willing to do the work, if they see that they have a problem, if they have a sincere desire to change the problem, then they get help. They tend to get better. But if they don't, if they stay kind of in that victim mode where life is always happening to them, then very little change is going to happen. But it's change is hard. It's hard for all of us. Yes, and many people can be in denial as well. Okay, that's a great comment. Let's see, Dana, can you let everyone know that missing your ex and thinking about them is good, because the borderlines and narcs who move on quickly are not healthy? I will say, I'll kind of expand that comment to say it's normal. It's normal to miss your ex. Even if it was a really abusive relationship, in part it's normal because it was still a relationship and it was a real relationship to you. And so that takes some time to sort out. It's not like, a person calls you a bunch of names, or a person hits you or does something, and that emotional light switch just flips off, and you're like, well, I'm done and sucks to be them, and then you just kind of go along on your merry way. It doesn't happen like that. There's still kind of this very real grief process that we all go through when a relationship ends. And yes, it's not normal to just be fine the next day and to move on with life. It's definitely feels like you're swimming upstream, and I am worried about people who move on quickly, because then it kind of shows me, it's like, well, were you really even in that relationship? Like, were you even emotionally, attached? Because, kind of what are you suppressing? What are you not talking about? Um, Yeah, you are healthy, normal to miss them because odds are you're probably a kind, decent person who thought you were in a normal relationship with a normal person and that what you were experiencing fell within the range of normal highs and lows. That's what most of us think, and why wouldn't we think that, right? So if people knew they were in an abusive relationship, they would probably leave. But most people don't identify what they're going through as abuse. It's A lot of people tend to think of abuse as something more severe than what's going on with them. It's this idea of it's not abuse if I can still tolerate it. Even if they're getting hit, even if they're getting broken bones, it's this idea of, well, this person will change. Kind of given enough time or therapy or rehab or love or what have you, they can still potentially change. How does a person with what we have been through with this abuse keep people at bay without seeming like we are arseholes? Like when we are kind and say no, they hear yes. Like, are you talking about meeting new people? How does a person with what we have been through with this abuse keep people at bay? And they try even harder to bond with us when we are trying to recover and get our head straight. Um, I would not worry about how they think, what they think of you. You know, you need to do what you need to do, and if you come across as an arsehole, then you come across as an arsehole. You know, that's you can tell people. Just in general, not I really went through a lot, and I just want to be alone right now. Thanks, but no thanks, kind of a thing. Okay, I think she means cluster B people, Dana, keeping him at a distance. The best way to keep cluster B or any kind of manipulative, any person, like any person that you don't want in your life, the best way to keep them out of your life is to have healthy boundaries and to pay attention to how you feel. So if you're feeling anxious or depressed or uncomfortable, that's probably a good one, or resentful, or you're starting to feel confusion. Is it me or is it them? Is it me or is it them? You're starting to kind of question their behavior. You're wondering, are they lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating? These are all signs that this is probably like not somebody that you want in your life, that you need to kind of take a step back and really examine this person and in your dynamic, because odds are you don't feel that way with other people in your life. That's kind of how you can tell, is if you don't, if you feel, pretty good around other people, if you don't have issues trusting other people, if you don't, or if you aren't like specifically suspicious of other people, like if your spidey sense is going off around a certain person and you're thinking, are they drama or is it me? Like, am I being hypervigilant or are they really drama? If you're questioning if it's you or if it's them, odds are it's them. Especially if you're not questioning how you feel about other people, right? Ellen says they say that narcissistic people and codependent people pretty much go hand in hand. What do you think about that? I think that by and large that's probably true. Again, I think it depends on the definition that you're using for codependent. If we're talking about codependent in terms of, you know, codependent people tend to have poor boundaries. They tend to be very much like this over giver, whereas you have more of a narcissist or narcissistic kind of person who tends to be a taker, right? So you have like an extreme giver and an extreme taker. And so a lot of narcissists, there can only be one star of the show, right? So they tend to find a lot of partners that tend to let them be the star of the show. So more passive people, but that's not always the case. I mean, I think sometimes, and this is maybe more of like a, kind of on that sociopathic side of the spectrum, they are attracted more towards supply. So if a person has money, or if they want sex, or if they want social status, or kind of what have you, then they're not necessarily attracted to, you know, kind of a codependent. They're going to really find whoever has whatever they want, and they're going to manipulate the hell out of that person in order to get whatever they want. So, a lot of people, kind of really question this. So they're like, they might feel like they were really strong. They had really solid boundaries. And, this person was absolutely Prince Charming until the truth came out. So, probably by and large, yeah, it's safe to say that narcissists and codependents go hand in hand, but it's not always the case. Okay, Lori says, describe what an empath is and why they attract narcissists. I think I'm an empath. Okay, so empaths tend to be very kind of empathetic, right? So we tend to really feel other people's emotions deeply. A lot of empaths tend to be vegetarians, or vegans. They tend to really love animals. They tend to, I mean, they tend to probably go into more kind of caregiving fields like teaching, nursing, therapist, social worker. They tend to be able to really read other people really, really well, probably even maybe better than themselves. They are incredibly, incredibly caring people. And I would agree. I hadn't heard the word empath until like fairly recently, like maybe 6 months or so ago. And I got chills when I read it because it described me to a T. And yeah, yeah. I think empaths and narcissists also go hand in hand. I think narcissists tend to be or maybe not attracted to, but like fascinated. And same with sociopaths, tend to be kind of fascinated by the fact that, you know, that empaths have so much emotion to give. I remember once, okay, so with Steve, we had this neighbor, and kind of long story short, they had these dogs that were in this cage, and that they'd lived in this cage for years. It was so heartbreaking. And kind of I had convinced them to give us the dog, that I would rehome this one dog. And so we found this dog. It was like this beautiful like Malamute dog. Found the dog a new home. Long story short, the dog, because it had lived in a cage pretty much its whole life, had attacked and killed this other little dog. And I was devastated. I was crying like you wouldn't believe that whole night. I couldn't regain my composure. I was so upset by this. And Steve had made the comment that he'd never met anybody that loved animals as much as I did. And then and it was more like, I don't think he could understand why I was so upset. And I remember at the time thinking that that was so weird that he wasn't affected by that. Yes, I'm a vegetarian too. So I think that there's a lot of people that tend to be, you know, I was a teacher before, and I'm a nurse now, and really been in a lot of, worked in nonprofits pretty much my whole life, and it's the same caregiving kind of fields. A lot of empaths, I think, people tend to feel safe around you. They can sense your warmth, your energy. I think, again, narcissists and sociopaths are attracted to this. I think a lot of that makes us kind of an easy target, because there is that they can sense that we're good people. Yeah. So Kay asks, what makes these personalities all have such similar behavior? It's amazing. All of our stories are so similar, right? I felt the exact same way. The first time when I got into a support group, I was blown away. Like, hearing all of these different stories. Because again, I thought I was alone too. And I'm like, wow, we are really just telling different versions of the same story. And then it like really blew my mind that talking to other victims and then hearing words like empath and then reading that description and being blown away, like, wow, wow, wow. We all, the victims, we all have so much in common. So like, people often tell me, they're like, well, Dana, I would, I really want love, I really want good friends, I really want to meet good people. And it's so interesting because it's like, do you guys ever look at the comments? Like, to me, it's like, look around all of these people here in the comment area. Like, these y'all, like, we are our people like that we have been looking for our whole lives. And it's just, it's weird. And so, and I think you'll find that in a lot of different support groups. Okay, good night, Cam. I'll see you next time. In different support groups, you'll find that you have these deep bonds with other victims, not just because of what you've been through, but because you have so much in common outside of that. Like, where did it go? Somebody was saying that they were getting ready to like teach yoga. And so, yeah, I think a lot of victims tend to be more, probably kind of hippie woo woo or more into, and I say that kind of jokingly, but I do mean that. Like, we tend to be more in tune with, and maybe open-minded to like energy and spirituality and a lot of that. I'll be curious to see what, when this live stream goes live, kind of like what other people have to say about it. See, Ellen says, my family told me that this was all in my head, but after seeing everybody talk about almost the exact experience I went through, well, needless to say, I'm finally starting to feel vindicated in a way. Yes. Yeah. I I think we all go through that. It's kind of part of this unintentional re-victimization that tends to happen to people. It's, we get victimized by the narcissist or sociopath, and we kind of get unintentionally re-victimized by friends and family, and so oftentimes therapists, because our stories are so like lifetime TV movie. I mean, unless you live it, you can't experience it. And then kind of the third kind of victimization is what we do to ourselves, right? Kind of wondering, maybe was it really that bad? Like, am I nuts? Am I nuts for thinking this? Am I nuts for thinking that Jack was trying to poison me? I mean, is that even realistic? Is that reasonable? I don't know. And so a lot of victims start feeling that way, like kind of what's real? And am I making too big of a deal out of this, or is they just question their sanity, they question what they went through, they question their perception of events. All of that's totally normal. How do they learn to manipulate people? That's a great question. If I had to guess, a lot of their behavior, manipulative behavior, it's kind of, it's very childish, right? So it's sort of like they, in a lot of ways, have a lot of behaviors that little kids have, that, but they don't grow out of it. Instead, they just kind of get better at it. And so it's sort of like you've got an adult body, but you've got like a 4-year-old at the wheel. And when you picture a 4-year-old who's making decisions, it's all impulsive, it's all reckless, it's all kind of whatever they want. And I don't, I think over time, well, it's like a kid, right? It's the same kind of thing. It's like a kid. They continue to get better at refining their manipulations to get what they want, to manipulate their parents. They know when to turn it on. They know when to turn it off. They know what they can get away with. It's that kind of thing. Ellen says, I spent months beating myself up for being so stupid. You were not stupid. Okay? You were not stupid. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. This is not your fault. Okay? What happened to you is not your fault. And so, normal, decent people, we all like to think that we can spot bad people, right? We all like to think that a bad person is as easy to spot as like Charles Manson, but they're not. There's, like, bad people often look like Bill Cosby, right? And so nobody saw him coming. And then if you do start seeing problematic behavior, like I'm sure Bill Cosby's wife was seeing problematic behavior over the years, but it's that whole cognitive dissonance where you just think, but that can't add up. Here's this really fantastic, charming, charismatic, wonderful person. This outrageous behavior can't this doesn't go together. And so if you listen to a lot of people describe relationships, especially with more of kind of like the sociopathic side of it, they'll say that the good times were really good, the bad times were really bad. And it's just it's hard to sort out everything. So Ellen says, "Yeah, well, I still wish that my 4-year-old ex narcissist would drive himself off a bridge." Yeah. Well, I think you're not alone in feeling that way. There's it's frustrating. It's probably one of the hardest things for me was, here I was at the time with Jack working at a domestic violence shelter in a small town, and went through this terrible experience, left, moved about 2 hours away, and all I could think about was, I'm sure he's going to be preying on these women that I had been working with, and many of which I considered friends. And I had, and it still bothers me to this day. It's so hard to walk away, and you wonder, it's like, that you're not doing the right thing. Like, it seems like there needs to be some sort of way to warn other people, hey, like, this person's a dangerous person. But it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to deal with that anger. If you really think about it, narcs are emotional rapists. I would agree completely. There is a term out there that's emotional rape, and it's very much the same feeling. It's very violating. It takes away your power and control. It's the same elements of rape, right? It's the taking somebody's power and control. It's manipulating them. It's abusing and using them, and then just it's taking away like their humanity. It's very, very, very violating. Yes. Okay. Great question. I have problems staying friends with the shared friends with my ex narc. It hurts to know that they party and they travel with him. It's like being betrayed over and over and over again. They love me but are not taking sides. I would say it is time to get some new friends, because this is something we talked a little bit about earlier. It's you a wound won't heal if you keep touching it. And so if you've got people, and of course, they're manipulated too, so they don't see this side of him. But you know you really want to have friends that have your back and take sides, because um there needs to be, like, you want people that are like, no, that's so not okay to be a total dirtbag human being. And so I would encourage you to start making new friends and kind of distancing yourself from those shared friends. I know it's hard, and I know, like, I totally get it. Like, it sucks. It sucks that you were victimized and now you're the one that has to not only heal, but do all of this work, right? Like, maybe you need to move. Maybe you need to find a job. Maybe you need to make new friends. It sucks. It sucks. And I'm so sorry. But that's sometimes it's like you have to just really get rid of a lot of stuff that has anything to do with that person in order to kind of get that clean slate, in order to fully heal. Okay, Tingley asks, "Hi Dana, what do you think of when people say that the younger generations are getting more and more narcissistic in general? Is there any truth to it, or is it just a superficial use of the word?" You know, I think kind of by and large, it's kind of more of like a superficial use of the word. It's, narcissism is so much more than just taking a bunch of selfies. I mean, that in itself is kind of problematic behavior. It's weird. So okay, here's what's weird. Okay, so like doing these YouTube videos, I'm in like a YouTube group because I don't know what I'm doing. So like I joined this group of other YouTube creators, and so we talk about videos and stuff. And it's, I should also add, I don't have a TV. This is another sign. We were talking about empaths earlier. I have not had a TV in almost 7 years now. And I don't, because I don't like violence. I don't like, I'm very selective about what I listen to and what I watch. And so I don't watch horror movies. I cannot handle horror movies. I don't do haunted houses. I don't like the gore around Halloween. I don't watch the news. I don't do any of that because it impacts me and I have a really hard time shaking it off. So I don't do it. So the point of that is that it's weird for me. I feel like kind of like Rip Van Winkle in a lot of ways because there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I just don't know about. And so there's a lot of these like young kids that are in this YouTube group, and they all have like beauty channels and or they're like personal vloggers. And so it's just the most bizarre thing because I just have kind of missed the evolution of all of that. And it's just, yeah, to me it's just it's just very strange. But I guess other people probably look at me and here's my YouTube channel, they probably think that's very strange too, right? That I have this channel, and who am I to be doing this, and kind of whatever. But my channel is not, to me, I guess it's different. Maybe it's the same, I don't know, but it's, to me it's different. But I think kids are developing more and more of that like entitlement mentality. But that might be kind of society at large, honestly. Especially, when you live, especially in this country, right? Like if you're living in the US, it's it's this, life is really easy, right? Like even the poorest people in this country still have it really, really good compared to pretty much everywhere else in the world. And there's just this sense of entitlement that a lot of Americans have, and it's really gross. And I think it's why they tend to not like Americans in other countries by and large. I don't even want to get into that, so like don't even start commenting on that. um let's see. Oh, I admire what you're doing. You have such a big heart. Well, thank you. Thank you. I absolutely love doing this, and it's just, it helps me too. This has been probably incredibly therapeutic, and like so many ways, in so many ways that I would never have even expected. Okay. Ooh, that's a good question. Oh gosh, this chat goes so fast. Let's see. Adrian says, "Me too. I have 7 years without a TV. I've done more with my life. I went to the movies and watched the Minions, and they follow a narcissist." So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Like, I really don't even know when I ever found time to watch TV. I feel like my life stays, like, I don't miss it at all. Plus, it's a great way. People, like, company does not want to stay at your house for like a really long time because they get bored out of their skull. It's kind of funny. Like, to me, it's just this, it's just my life. So I don't think anything of it, but they don't. They climb the walls when they're here. Um, let's see. Okay, yes. Oh, hi, YouTube commenter. Um, let's see. Darn, there was a great question. Oh, wait, is this it? Hi, Dana. Does healing really take a long time, or is it up to the individual? Can healing be done without a therapist involved? That is a fantastic question. And I would agree with YouTube commenter that yes, it's totally an individual experience. And, if you can get a good therapist that's really skilled with emotional and psychological abuse, a lot of them will tell you that they are, but they're not. And I think narcissistic abuse is its own animal because there's a lot of different things that are going on with it. It's there's so many things to kind of unravel. So Oftentimes therapy can be re-victimizing for a person. I went through several therapists and it did absolutely no good. I don't want to discourage people from therapy, but again, if you can find a good therapist, they are worth their weight in gold. But it can take some doing to try to find one that you really resonate with and that you have that rapport with. And healing is totally done on your. Everybody has their own time frame for healing. Some of the things that helped me the most with healing, I mentioned this before, but it was really making the decision just kind of one day that I was not going to let this destroy my life. Like that was the first. I didn't know how. Like I didn't have any clarity past that point, but I knew that much. I knew that I was not going to let them win and that I was not going to let him steal my happiness or any more of my life. And I think just knowing that, like kind of putting that like that stop loss on my pain, made me realize, okay, because before I was like all over the place emotionally, and it was sort of like, well, this could destroy my life, or maybe it wasn't going. But like once I realized this was not going to destroy my life, like that option was off the table, then it made healing a lot, I think, faster and a lot easier. Support groups helped tremendously, tremendously. The other people there, they know, they've been there, they've done that, they know what you've gone through. They're great, oftentimes great sounding boards for when you're feeling low. Plus, support groups are 24/7. So I think even if you find an awesome therapist, support groups are still great because we all, you're in therapy like 1 hour a week. Well, what are you going to do with the other, whatever, 140 something hours that's left, right? So I'm just made that number up. I don't even know how much. I'd have to do math, and I'm not doing math in public. So support groups are great that, for that. There's lots of them out there. If you go, my Facebook group on Facebook is called, I think it's called Narcissist Support, and like from YouTube. But again, there's lots of groups out there. I always encourage people join a few different ones and then spend some time in each one and see which ones are a good fit for you, because different people will click better in different groups. Okay, so here's another question. A lot of people say narcissists have no cure. Do you think love can break through, or is it a lost cause? I think that's a great question, and I think it kind of depends. Do I think it has a cure? Uh, you know, oh man, that's tough. I'm sure that there probably is a cure. Do we have a workable cure today in mental health? No, not really. But by and large, it's because narcissists tend to not think that they have the problem, so they don't ever go to therapy. And if they do, they're just kind of humoring their significant other. Do I think love can break through and heal somebody else? Not, no, no. And especially not, I mean, love is good. I think if you can love a person without expectation, and I'm not talking about like in a relationship, right? But if your goal is to just simply love them and then kind of let them be themselves, then that's maybe like a healthier way to do it. I wouldn't try to be in a dynamic where you're trying to like fix somebody with love. I think that's a really unhealthy dynamic. So, I've talked about this before where people will say, well, how, but what about compassion? What about love? And my response is, you know, yes, it's always good to give other people like love and compassion and respect and dignity, but not at if you have to sacrifice yourself, right? So if by giving them love, you're not showing yourself love. If your dynamic is kind of the one where you have to sink yourself in order to have them swim, then there's a problem. So it needs to be, giving yourself compassion, giving them compassion, giving yourself love, giving them love. But it can't be one-sided where you're the one that's giving and giving and giving and they're just taking and taking and taking, because that'll that'll kill a person is what it'll do. So Yeah. Okay, let's see. Questions. I think we're going to call it a night here in about 5, maybe 10 minutes. How about that? YouTube commenter says, I got rid of TV, then my internet bill went up to where I'm basically paying the same as when I had cable. They can't give it away. It's so bad. Yep. Yep. I know I honestly, I hadn't watched a whole lot of YouTube until I began doing YouTube. Um, I just, I was a big time reader. That was where I spent most of my time with my nose buried in a book. And I feel like Rip Van Winkle sometimes. People are saying, good night, John Boy. Good night, Mary Ellen. Talking about the Waltons. Um, let's see. There was a question earlier, and I think she's already hopped off, but it was about trauma bonds and kind of these relationships. And yes, so that is, very common, especially when you have the whole kind of like sweet mean cycle in a relationship where it's this push pull. You know, and there's another term out there, it's called Stockholm syndrome. And this has a lot to do with kind of the whole trauma bonds thing. And it's this idea that, well, Stockholm syndrome, let me just kind of back up. So that has to do with, hold on, let me get down to comments here. So Stockholm syndrome was coined after there was a bank robbery, and the bank robbers held some people captive, and I think for like 3 or 4 days. And so when the hostages were finally rescued, what they found was that the hostages were defending their the captors. And so I think one of them actually got engaged to one of the captors, and then the other one helped raise funds for their legal defense. And so they were trying to figure out like what happened to these people. And so it was just what they found is when people are in really traumatic situations, even if it's caused by a person in this traumatic situation, it creates this bond between people. So it's this idea of we can get through this together, and look at how much we've gone through. But the reality is, it's not that we have gone through so much together. It's this other person's put the other person through so much, right? And so, but that trauma really does bond two people together, and it's hard for them to get across, to get away from that. Ellen says, I hope you do more live chats. I am going to be doing live streams every single Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So, and it'll be kind of whatever you want to do. It can be Q&A. We can have a specific topic. I am totally open and flexible to doing all of this. So, let's see. Doug asks, what is going to be the regular time for this live stream? Are you doing one every week? I am not. Doug, I just want you to know, I just always smile every time I see a comment from you. I just think you are just the sweetest person. I love your love and light to all, and I love you have a really beautiful light about all of your comments. So just know that. But yes, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday is the plan. Um, let's see. Sanctified says, did you ever feel like they wanted to make a nest in your mind? Um, let's see. I just lost the comment. Real deep, as if you don't even exist in your own mind. Yes. And so like what you're talking about is, is, that's manipulation. Gaslighting is another big thing for narcissists, and manipulative people in general. where people don't know which end is up. A lot of victims tend to come out of these relationships and they often, okay, so Bonjour asks, is it normal to feel like the narcissist at the end of the relationship? Yes. And so that's part of it sanctified is that people, when this relationship's over, a person is so manipulated that they have a hard time telling who who really has the problem. Because especially if you're with a person who is continually telling you that you're the problem, that you're demanding, that you have too high of expectations, that you're not, that you should be more grateful, that it's all your fault, which is very, very common, then that's hard to get over. And so a lot of victims get out of it and they just think, what did I do? What's so wrong with me? What is so, am I demanding, that I wanted more attention or more affection or more love, or that that you wanted your partner to change? Like, does this, am I controlling? Am I the narcissist? Am I selfish and entitled? Like, who's the problem? What's going on? Oh, that's all very, very normal. That's why a part of it is because that's so common at the end of the relationship that I encourage people to not focus so much on labels. Like, yes, labels can give a person a lot of clarity, but at the same time, they can be really damaging. So, especially if a person is misdiagnosed or goes undiagnosed. And this is why I encourage people, like, at the end of the day, that the label is not what's important. It's more of a person's desire to change. Because, and keep in mind too, a person could, they don't have to be a narcissist or a sociopath to cause a lot of damage in your life. Like, there's lots of different things a person could have going on that can really cause a tremendous amount of damage in a person's life. So it's not just narcissists or just sociopaths. It's kind of toxic behavior in general. And there's lots of it out there. Even like quote unquote normal people can have, there's, periods in their life where they have a lot of toxic behavior. And this is why it's important to spot that behavior and to see too, like with yourself at the end of these relationships, to see, if you're wondering, are you a narcissist and you don't know it? The answer is, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's whether or not you're willing to work on anything that you see in your personality that you think is potentially problematic. Like, that's what's more important with that. Um, let's see. I've obviously missed something because somebody's talking about Santa Claus. So, um, okay, Sanctified says, my mind was not my own. He raped my mind like the movie Gaslighting. Yes, and that's very, very common. And this is why I am saying when a person goes to find a therapist, a lot of therapists are not trained specifically in narcissistic abuse. I mean, I don't even think that there's like an official terminology for narcissistic abuse. There should be. There's a lot of terms that are floating around out there, especially on YouTube, that are fantastic terminology. A lot of which is, I think, was really developed by Sam Vaknin. It's not official terminology. It should be because it's great, but it's not. And you know so anyways, the point is a lot of therapists are not necessarily familiar with like specifically narcissistic abuse, and there's a lot of elements in it that are very specific, that are not so common, with like regular domestic violence or domestic abuse. Kind of the whole gaslighting is a big part of it. The PTSD that a lot of people experience when these relationships end. The paranoia, the night terrors, the not trusting, the self doubt, the self esteem issues. A lot of that. There's so much to it. Um, Okay, YouTube commenter says, I experienced something just like out of the movie Gaslight. I'm sorry that you went through that. I talked a little bit about, I dated this guy in high school who was a total nut job. I kind of look back on that and, I'm not meaning to blame my mom, but I kind of wonder, like, I can't believe she let me see this guy. You know, again, like, not to blame her. It's just kind of, I would not, if I had a teenage daughter, there would be no way in hell that I would let her out of the house to go see a guy like the guy I was seeing. But yeah, it was the same kind of like gaslighting stuff. He actually told me one time, I had confronted, I don't even remember what I confronted him about, but he had made the comment, well, what are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? And I believed him. So it was that kind of stuff. And this guy that I dated in high school, I mean, it's he had several different names. I still don't fully even know his real name. He'd lied to me about his age. I found out all of this stuff when he ended up going to jail. And again, I think we began dating when I was 16, and he had told me he was, I think, 15, but then it turned out he was like 19. I don't even, it was crazy, crazy. So, okay, Henry mentions, I've wondered if I have sucker written in ink only they can read. I think a lot of us feel like that, but a lot of it's just, if we can get solid boundaries and healthy standards, then all of the wrong people don't stand a chance at staying in your life. Because once you start spotting that problematic behavior, you give them the boot and they're out. And so this is why I encourage people. It's not so much about, you know, people that are attracted to you, because we all attract the wide range of people. It's what you're attracted to and how long you keep them in your life. And so, I mean, I've dated, after Steve, I've had a few dates with a couple of different guys that were, I'm pretty sure, narcissists or sociopaths. I mean, it is the same behavior. And I was really like, what the hell? I mean, what are the odds? I mean, I was making myself nuts over it. I'm like, statistically speaking, like, what are the odds that I would encounter this many crazy people? And but the reality is, I think the statistics are wrong. I think that there's a lot more of these people out there than is even close to being realized. And, they are just out there, and you're probably going to encounter more of them. And don't panic when it happens, okay? What's important is that you can spot problematic behavior in other people and in yourself. Okay. And so then kind of our part in all of this, and I'm going to be covering this in the red flags of a codependent series that I'm going to be doing here about boundaries, has to do with just that. And so the red flags of a narcissist series focuses more on what does problematic behavior look like in other people. And then the codependent series is going to be focusing more on, like, what does problematic behavior and thinking look like within us, and our boundaries and our standards and our thinking. And all of this is very scrambled, but I'm going to do my best. That's a big topic, and I'm going to do my best on that. Okay, Lola asks, can you explain an altruistic narcissist? I am going to guess that you're probably talking more about, like, the covert narcissists. So the ones that seem like really fantastic people. Okay, good night, YouTube commenter. We'll see you hopefully next week. The altruistic ones come across as like super fantastic people. They're often, they volunteer, they're ministers, they're active in their church, they're very, very, very helpful, right? But they are selfish and often highly manipulative and often very dangerous. You know, they kind of, there's a saying out there, that the best hiding place for evil is behind good. And there's a lot of truth to this. So, like, for example, well, I've in my family, I had my grandfather was a minister, and people that didn't know him that well loved him. And he cheated on my grandmother. He just pretty much destroyed her emotionally for a long time, and she had to rebuild her, her whole life, like on every single level. She ended up divorcing him, I think, in like the late 60s, which you just didn't do. And, he was a minister. And so people were like, well, oh my God, how can you leave like this wonderful man of God? And it was, I'm sure, a total like mind scramble for her, because she was such a good Christian woman, who really walked the walk and had tremendous amount of faith. And he was professing to be this wonderful man of God, and he was cheating on her right and left, and God only knows what all he was into. There was concern. My mom had concerns that he was a child molester, and you know, yeah. So they present really well. I mean, kind of like the Bill Cosby. I mean, I've already used him as an example, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, they're so charming, they're so seemingly good, but they're not. I was gonna say the other example. Yeah, Jim Jones is another example. My another family member of mine, and he was really awful to his wife and to his daughter. And it was the most bizarre thing. Like, at his funeral, there was a line out the door at the wake. So before the funeral, the wake, for hours. Like, even to this day, like, I've never seen anything like it. He volunteered tens of thousands of hours at different causes. The Boy Scouts even donated a whole fishing pier to him. Like, he was really, really, really involved in volunteering. People could not say enough good things about him. And I'm sure a lot of it was a lie, but he did a lot of really good things in life as well. But he did a lot of really, really rotten things in life too. So yeah, they're out there. Um, Okay, so here is another question. This is, how about let's do like two or three more questions and we'll call it a night. Okay, Dana, I am visiting family this holiday season and can use your and others' advice on this. What are your thoughts on protecting the narcissist? While I feel resentment and gave up on them, I can't bring myself to out them to the family, even though it's hard to keep hiding everything. So, is this narcissist a family member of yours? I guess it kind of depends on like what the dynamic is. Um, here's the deal with like outing a narcissist is really, by and large, nobody's, and I hate to say this, but really nobody's going to believe you. They're going to think that, most likely, that you are being dramatic, and that you're bitter or jaded, or they're not going to get it. And it's one of those things too, like, had we not gone through it, we probably wouldn't have gotten it either. And it's so hard to believe, because especially if your dynamic went from like this lifetime TV movie to, or from a fairy tale to a lifetime TV movie, like that's hard to wrap your mind around. And so people tend to think like this stuff doesn't really happen. Like, again, this goes back to, we all like to think that we can spot bad people coming, right? That we can see them, they look like Charles Manson, but they don't. They're bad, abusive people can and are oftentimes, they can be a spouse, a family member, a neighbor, a friend, a sibling, a parent, a child, any number of roles in our life. They can be a priest, a person you go to church with, a person you volunteer with, a person that your kid plays baseball with. Like, there's lots of different roles that they can play. Yes, it's funny how everyone knows the term narcissist, but when you try to explain it to them, that you're the one they think is the crazy one. Yes, and this kind of goes with the whole, like, these terms are, people like don't know what these terms really mean. And so you could even say, oh, that person's psycho, right? Or that person's a sociopath, or even like that person's bipolar. There's like the the real definition of these terms, and then there's like society's definition of these terms, and society's definitions kind of close to like what the real term means, but it's just so thrown around that it's not taken seriously. And so if a person says like, yeah, that guy is psycho, that's probably more accurate, but they still are going to think probably that, you're overreacting, or that it's not that bad, especially if the person comes across as charming. Because again, like, you think psycho, you think Norman Bates, like that guy. If you were to see Norman Bates, you'd be like, yeah, that guy's nuts. I need to cross the street and get out of his way, right? It's not the case if they're like Bill Cosby, or or Scott Peterson, or somebody more like that. Your sociopath is probably a better word. People hear the word narcissist, they tend to think of, you know, Kim Kardashian, or this is hard for me because I don't have a TV, so I don't really know who's like, Kanye West, Donald Trump. Although it's interesting now because Donald Trump's running for president, and I haven't, again, I don't keep up with any of this. So my guess is I don't know what people, if they're still thinking that Donald Trump is, and I don't know if he's, like a dangerous narcissist, or kind of where he really is on that spectrum. He's definitely grandiose. And he's definitely very full of himself, but is he, dangerous and destructive? I don't know. So, okay, Sanctified has to leave. I want to say thank you. This is my first time on live chat. It was so wonderful getting to chat with you. I'm so glad that we could help kind of validate what you went through, and you are not alone on this. And I hope to see you on Wednesday, and check in with the Facebook group too. That's a great place to go. So take care. Lots of love to you. Let's see. We're gonna hop off here and like really soon. Donald Trump seems like an overt narcissist. I would agree completely. I think he's pretty textbook. Like, don't think it gets much more textbook than that. Frankly, I would agree. If he gets into the office, Donald Trump could be very dangerous. Yeah, because and I'm not talking about like Republicans and Democrats here. I'm talking about like, if you have a severely personality disordered person steering the ship, it's going to be a problem. You're talking kind of, Kim Jong Il. This is what that and that might even be, I don't know if that's personality disorder or mental illness or both, but problematic behavior for sure. And it's scary when you give a person that much power, that's that power hungry. They become very, very unpredictable, and they want more and more and more. So it's scary. So lots of love to you. Okay, good night, Sanctified. We'll see you soon. um Let's see. I watched the documentary about Lance Armstrong the other night. Yeah, it's another great example of a narcissist. Charlie Sheen, with all the stuff that's going on with him. Um, I guess if anybody had any doubt, like, I think, just the lack of empathy, the lack of remorse, the level of entitlement, the selfishness, kind of all the makings of it there. You know, I don't know. It's hard to. I mean, it's hard to say for sure. We can all just kind of armchair quarterback, a lot of this, but just kind of, I guess, broad brush overview of like media personalities. You can kind of say like, well, this person's got this character trait or whatever, and this is what's problematic. For sure not saying that, you know, that they are any of these things. It's just from what we can tell from what the media shows us, that's what this is kind of what that looks like in motion. But who knows how people are behind closed doors? So, okay. Well, okay, guys, I am going to go to bed because it is way past my bedtime, and I should say my yoga pants and YouTube time, as I like to call it. So I'm really glad that you guys all hopped on this live chat. And, like I said before, I'm totally open to any and all feedback for these live chats. I really want this to be time for you guys. So let me know if you have any constructive criticism, if you want to see things differently, if let me know, and I'll work towards making that happen. So okay, guys, good night, and I'll see you next Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and there is so much to be thankful and grateful for. I just want you guys to know that even though you went through all of this, even though life can be really painful and it can be really unfair, it is still good. It is still good. There is still so much good in the world. There are still so many good people in the world. And just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can heal from this. So take care, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.